welcome to this very important press conference. After the parliamentary elections, the Central Committee of this party was tasked with the responsibility to map the political landscape. That work is still not complete, but there is pressure coming from some members that there is a need to hold such a press conference because there is a vacuum in the political situation in the country. So even though we have not completed what we have started doing, we accepted to have this press conference to clear the air. At least so many people have been approaching us. Even yesterday, somebody came here to say, you must come out to speak. You must come out with force, he was saying this. And he was not the only one, there are many people. So we feel that, yes, we'll come out to speak, even though we have spoken louder than anybody in this country. So today's press conference is designed to put some clarity into the current political situation and to begin a new process of speaking with the Gambian people. So without much ado, I would ask Halifu to come and do his presentation. Thank you very much, Halifu.
This is closing a chapter. Of a beginning which started on the 2nd of December 2016, and ended with the presidential elections of 2021. A new chapter is beginning and started on the 19th of January, 2022, when the person elected the presidential elections of 2021 assumed office. The Gambian people are asking for a conversation. And Pdois has the institutional memory, having been here in the First Republic, Second Republic, and a transition that no one expected. It is well suited to open up this new conversation on the way forward for the Gambian people. We're not here out of our own volition, because I have a transitional role. I've already indicated what is best suited for the political situation as far as my person is concerned. It is now left to the Central Committee to ultimately decide when it is best to carry out such a wish. But we met and engaged in vigorous conversation within ourselves to find out why Pdois is where it is, whether it is relevant for it to exist, an existential question. And having lived long enough and served long enough, it is no longer an academic exercise for us. is a life and death question for the party and life and death question for this nation. So our conversation is not an ordinary one. And we would have wanted to wait until we complete our exercise before facing you. But within our ranks, it was made clear that the Gambian people are still in need of a voice, of clarity, to be able to make sense of what is happening. From our own point of view, you have a government. You elected that government. We are a government in waiting. If you desire to entrust your powers to us, it is the government that is elected that should be speaking and explaining. For us, we should hold it into account on what it is doing. But it is for you to examine whether the promises are being fulfilled and prepare yourself for another election. Because you own this country and you entrust power just for a time. And you have the power to make those you elect to render accounts. That is the democratic culture. We mentioned as early as 19 January 2022 that we were beginning this new journey and that we will not be silent in gauging, scrutinizing, and restraining the government in office to do what is in line with the aspirations of the people. So there's no need to be in a hurry. We are going to be there, speaking as we have always done in the interest of the Gambian people. But to us, and maybe to many, we see that the government in office is more engaged in trial and error form of governance than a strategic one directed by a transformative agenda. It's an opinion. They may wish to disagree, but we want a fresh conversation, a constructive one. They can engage us in a debate on the issue. And that's what Pdois intends to do in this coming 4 years, going to 5. To begin to put the issues on the fore and for debates to take place so that the Gambian people will be clear regarding the future of their lives and that of their children and children's children. But while trial and error, the first act of this government is to establish what it called a caretaker government. So from our own perspective, governance must be based on fundamental instruments. And if you don't know those instruments, and you cannot safeguard them, and you cannot be guided, then something is wrong. From our own perspective, we have followed the developments. You should know what type of country you want. And those we elect should tell us what type of country they want to build. They should convince us that the type of country they want to build is fit for us to live in. That is their duty. Again, express under Section 1, subsection 2 of the Constitution that authority is derived from our consent, the consent of you, the sovereign Gambian people. And it should be exercised to promote your general welfare. And it is very clear under Section 26 of the Constitution that we have rights. And one of the fundamental political rights is to take part in the running of public affairs. We, the Gambian people, we should take part in the running of public affairs. We should participate in genuine elections. But we also have right to equal services on equal terms. That is why you have a budget. 2021, we were informed that up to 25 billion would be mobilized for our welfare. It was clear that we depend on taxation and non-tax revenue. But out of 13.7 billion, 12 billion from taxation, only about 1.5, 12.2, 1.5 from non-tax revenue. So the productive base of your economy is very, very narrow. Agriculture contributes, they said, 18% of GDP. Manufacturing or industry, 20% of GDP. And services, 58%. The other 7% from other sources. But look at your agricultural sector. When the government was being supported out of goodwill, that 2016 marked a transformation in Gambian politics. Never in the history of this country had change ever come through the ballot box since 18 February 1965 until 2nd December 2016. And it came about under very difficult circumstances, which the world understood. And this country earned the goodwill of the whole world. Consequently, a lot of project grant, budget support. And the dream was that this was going to continue. So consequently, they had mighty plans. Almost 29 billion in expenditure for 2022 as a plan in 2021. But without the building of the productive base of the economy, you will just simply rely on taxation and grants. And when the economy is not growing, businesses are not earning more, if you impose a tax on them, you make them to collapse. So there is a limit to the tax base as a source of revenue. And if you don't have no building of your non-tax revenue base, then you have to rely on grants and loans for, let's not even call it survival, because that will not lead you to survive. Let's say for vegetation. I'm selecting my words. Because in 2021, there was over $81 billion in debt burden. And it is very clear in government policy that they can no longer take loans with very high interest rates and short term, short duration. So the loan package has also become limited. COVID-19 enabled the country to even push the payment of the debts forward, debt servicing forward. But now it is going to catch up with us. So you have to deal with the realities of our economy. And that is why you had to have a revised budget. It is important then for you to realize that the major illness of our economy is the absence of injection of investment in the productive base so as to ensure that we earn more by our own will and might than to depend on international assistance. We have reviewed what was promised in 2021 by relying on subsidies to be able to provide fertilizer and then increase what was the market price for grounds. Many people felt that this was going to be permanent. But what became the reality? Fertilizer went to 2,000 rather than 700, and most farmers cannot afford it. And what does the government have to say? Ukraine. That the war in Ukraine is what has made the price of fertilizer to rise up, and they cannot do anything about it. If you cannot do anything about the problems of the people, then you should really also accept. And that, well, it is the people to decide that. Because you will not decide that for yourself, whether you should be there or not. But that is the essence. Now, let's look at a farmer in Parliament who understood Pdois' message and how he influenced the village to be able to address the problems of production. These farmers decided to contribute almost like an osusu and save the money in the bank. 6 years before this farming season, they used to take that money and give each family here 2 bags of fertilizer. And then you continue to work, and when you sell your crop, you pay without interest. They did this for 5 years. First year, 2 bags. Second year, 4 bags. Third year, 5 bags. And it goes on that way. But this farming season, the price of fertilizer went to $2,000. And they could only give those people 2 bags instead of the 6 bags based on what was incremental in their earning capacity. And they too are being told that Ukraine is the problem. So you go to even the farming community now, Ukraine war is an issue. But let's look at simple economics. every input in production will reflect in the cost of the product, and in marketing, that cost will reflect. So the 2,000 you spend on fertilizer used in farming, ultimately the groundnut crop should also yield an equivalent sum that will take into consideration what was spent. So if you have planners who are indeed planners, they should be able to envisage the production level, the international prices for the crop. And a government which wants production to be boosted up would not hesitate subsidizing the $2,000 say fertilizer, so the production will go and capture that in the sale of the crop. What makes that impossible? So essentially, governments must be governments of thinkers. That's why governments are governments. In direct exercise of power by the people. Why should I give you my might to exercise if you cannot serve me? Therefore, our problem is not Ukraine. Our problem is us, is policy. It's our capacity to understand our problems and find solutions for them. You look at Gambia, we are importing most of the things that we are consuming. In 2020 alone, over 1.2 billion in terms of cereals, over 2 billion in terms of rice. We're importing eggs, we're importing potatoes, we're importing onions. We have a very fine weather. We don't have snow like Ukraine or Russia. We have waterways everywhere, underground water sources. Others will come and go to a farming community, sign contract with them, and they will yield their land. They'll use the same farmers to go and grow bananas, export it, and make millions. And the alcalos of our villages and our village development committees will be sharing pittance and continue to cry about the lack of boreholes. They have to seek charity from the south, from that fund, to be able to have boreholes. But somebody else is using our land to sell bananas outside, make foreign exchange, and does not need charity to build the boreholes or use any facility that is necessary to sprinkle their farm. And we claim that we are independent. But we cannot think for ourselves. Use our own resources for our own development. We have sand mining. They call it sand, rutile, ilmenite, zircon. How many years? They said your mobile phones need these things to be made. So it means that this resource is needed for eternity. How much do we have? Is it restricted to that area alone? Who is doing any form of prospecting to know what we have? For decades, First Republic, Second Republic, that some claim, they were doing better, So you compare the first and the second and no republic. So you compare governments instead of examining the state of existence of our people. How are we living? How did we live in the past? How did we live in the Second Republic? How are we living now? This is what Pdois has been examining and giving you answers that no one dared to challenge. The only challenge I ever have, and I don't want to really bring certain things and lower our press conference chair, stop me if I want to go further. There's somebody saying that he's a capitalist at a debate. So if you have money, what has that got to do with the poor farmer and the worker? How can a capitalist president feed farmers and workers? To share his property? How can that person enable the farmers, workers to get the means of production? Or the small scale, medium size, large size enterprises to be able to get the capital they need? What does the personality of a person have to do with policy? But this is the problem of our politics. It's not about personality. It is about policy. What we own as a people, our material resources, how do we transform it to ensure that we are self-reliant in having food, water, clothing, housing, the things that are the wherewithals of life that we cannot do without? That is our challenge. And if we cannot stand on a political platform and talk about it, I dare not say we should not stand. It's your democratic right to stand and say whatever you want. But it is the right of the people to demand for clarity, for substance, for issues, for solutions. Go and protest. Never, ever will you be able to squeeze water from stone. If you do not select the governments that can have the policies which can be put into operation to address your needs and aspirations, you are done for. Shout to the top of your voice. Milk and honey will never drop in your mouth. It is your duty to own your mind, and it should guide your heart, and you make the right decision. Then you can tell those people, well, if you don't make the right decision, you promise it, then don't even come appear to talk to me. But you select as you wish. Well, you also live and reap as reality dictates. Social scientists have made it very clear that society does not develop according to our whims and caprices. The material condition we inherit will determine the type of life we're going to live and the type of development that is possible. So Pdois has been speaking. Let's call it the voice of silence. Because everywhere people come and tell us, you told us, now we are seeing it. Why are you speaking? He's speaking every minute, every second. Every time you say, well, you told us. Why are you speaking? You just want us to stand like this again and speak and speak and speak to you what we have said over and over again. And you continue saying, they're just repeating themselves. So you force us to talk, and at the end of the day, well, they're just repeating themselves. Look at the local government structure. Section 193 aimed to have democratically elected councils with a relative high degree of autonomy to be able to have community development. That's why you have village development committees, ward development committees. All these institutions were meant to be in touch with the people. That when councils plan their budget, in fact, the words should be displaced in the words for people to add whatever they have before it is actually discussed at the council level. They wanted the people to be involved. In 2007, they amended the Local Government Act. On the Section 9, 3 months before the election of councils, councils are dissolved, and the president authorized to select people who will manage the council until the other councillors are elected and assume office. Where on earth could that be conceived to be democratic? 2016, we brought about the change so that we can amend those laws and change the whole constitution, change the whole laws of the country so that we can give the Gambia a third republic and a new start. That never happened. And at the end of the day, what did you hear? Our people themselves were attacking each other. The nation became divided instead of uniting to build a constitution to govern us. So it is important for Pdois to take the initiative. We did so in 1995. We did so in 1996. But where are the writers writing about it? Where are the researchers researching about it? You've had a whole TRRC, the history of how this country moved back into civil democratic rule. It was a struggle led by this party, with decrees imposing absolute tyranny by condemning and punishing freedom of association, freedom of political thought, like Decree number 4. How many of you know about those decrees? Who discuss about them? Who would say that those who overthrew the government could only impose their will up to December 1994? After that, it was all consultation in order to move back to a system where you will hold power to decide who should run your affairs. But that whole history is hidden because you would have seen the value of Pdois just as you have seen it in the impasse. The Central Committee has reviewed that and have seen the need that we will rewrite the history of that period to make it accurate for you to see the value of Pdois, not only in how many votes it has, but how it has helped to lead the country from behind at critical times. There is no doubt that the current local government structures cannot serve the communities. And those who are running them know that. A properly run local government structure must be able to build all the secondary roads. There will be devolution of power where health centers will be put under their jurisdiction. Public health services will be put under their jurisdiction. Educational facilities will be put under their jurisdiction. Housing facilities will be put under their jurisdiction. They are meant for community development because the national government is there. And they are there with the grassroots. And that is why, in terms of our policy, we have said, and said it rightly, that you have to change the whole planning structure of government revenue to ensure that balanced and proportionate development takes place from the government budget. You must have the planning at the grassroots level in mind so that the councils will bring their budgets and they'll be evaluated, examined, and see which projects are actually going to facilitate proper drainage facilities, proper road facilities, all sorts of infrastructure. And that will be taken into consideration in the actual planning of the government. So that when resources are to be allocated, councils will have their fair share to facilitate development. But not only that, the revenue earned from the local structures must be retained to facilitate the development that are required in the local area. That's our policy. That's what we are talking about. Which party has ever made such pronouncement? Which government, since the First Republic, Second Republic, even this existing government? But that is our policy. If you do not put it in this office, we cannot implement it. And you will continue to say, show us what you can do by building a borehole there, by building a school there. It is Pdois that have built this borehole or school. Yet Pdois has been here, running a nursery school where those who went to those schools are now having their PhDs. Many young people with journalism have gone everywhere. Now they are everywhere in media houses, owning media houses. Thousands of people who lost their land before Pdois made them to get their land. Thousands of people lost their jobs. You know, our publishing houses made them to gain them. We run our social clinic that had enabled people to save millions and earn millions. And never beat our chests to say that we are doing that, because to us it is national service, public service. So essentially, everywhere, whenever you have your prize-giving days, who do you turn to come and inspire the young? We've been here for national service. We've given everything for national service. But the duty of government is now imposed on those who do not collect taxes. How can they discharge that function? So it is important for you to bear in mind that unless you entrust the national coffers or the local coffers to a party, don't demand for services. Otherwise, you are being, I cannot use the term, I should not say anything here that will offend anyone. So it is important for you to bear in mind that the developments that have taken place, which needs our attention, require a government which understands the fundamentals of development. Look at the oil spill in May. Oil spill. To this day, there is no program to deal with that emergency. The Constitution makes it absolutely essential that when you have any state that may threaten nature or life, it is important to declare a state of emergency of some sort. Not the one that make people to be quarantined, etc., but one that will enable to mobilize all resources nationally and internationally to be able to address it. We had newspapers like Folia getting into boats and following it just to prove that it is a reality. And then follow the authorities to be able to make a statement that will show that they are doing something, not just a statement for its sake, that they are doing something about it. To this day, nothing concrete has been done to be able to address it. So it is important, therefore, for you to bear in mind that the government's duty is to have a ministry where if some things like that happen, immediately the ministry and the agency should take the bull by the horn and get the government to act with speed. Otherwise, nature will be destroyed, livelihoods will be lost, and ultimately, pollution will lead to loss of lives. Cancer of all sorts can develop by eating certain things that will be coming from those waters. You've also heard about those babies. We have doctors who detected that babies were dying. If they were not keen enough, many would have died. But they were keen enough to trace the source and to alert the authorities for something to be done. What you must bear in mind is that the country has children, just like families have children. The country has children. You and I and everybody else must be seen to be sons and daughters of the country. And the country must protect its children. It must ensure that even one life is not lost. That is why we are combating infant mortality. That's why we are combating maternal mortality. We don't want a single life to be lost. So any single life that is lost is a loss for the nation. That's a child who could have been president, who could have been minister, who could have been an engineer, you could have been a doctor, you could have been anything else. Like you, me, and anybody else. So when such things happen, it becomes a national issue, and all of us must be concerned and be involved in minimizing the problem and preventing recurrence. We must minimize the problem and prevent recurrence. All of us must be part of the solution. I will have to conclude so that you have time to ask the relevant questions that you may wish to ask. But you have seen Banjul. You've seen the floor. And the project was designed to be able to address such drainage problem. As far as Constitution is concerned, a government can prepare a budget and have a development component to finance that particular project. But to have pre-financing, somebody just getting up and finance a project, and then the government start to take from the public funds to pay, we have told the government that over and over again in that assembly that that is not a proper thing to do. Why is it not a proper thing to do? Because if you want to give a loan to the government, because that's a loan, you want to do something, well, that's a loan you want to give to them. And any loan must come to the National Assembly, properly crafted, with all the project designs, and brought for ratification or approval by the National Assembly. So, what is important is for all of us to understand that yes, we can criticize all these things, but ultimately, you elect representatives. And before you elect them, they come before you to seek your mandate. And when you elect them, you also have to take a responsibility for what they do. And when we criticize, you have to take note of what we say. The ultimate consequences of that is to be able to be a good decision maker in the future, to prevent recurrence. We will be having an engagement with the Gambian people. Chair, I think, is on the Sunday, the 13th of November. We wanted to have this in July, when we had our anniversary on the 31st. That is to have a television station stationed here. And the leadership will be around and membership. And question can come from any part of the world to ask anything that you want to know about it. That is how transparent and how accountable Pdois intends to be. We will accept all our weaknesses, and we hope you will recognize all our strengths. And together, we can work to overcome our weaknesses, build upon our strength, and build a Gambia that is worthy of emulation in the world. One thing that I must say on behalf of our Central Committee is that Gambia is at a crossroads. And those of you who are here must recognize that the destiny of this country is in your hands. Africa is really changing in a negative way. You look at Chad. You look at Mali, you look at Guinea, you look at Burkina Faso. What is the trend? The patriots have taken over. The constitution is suspended. All borders are closed. And it's our duty to fight terrorists. Instead of food, water, housing, now fighting terrorism is the fundamental objective of the government. And those terrorists are the sons and daughters of the land or the sub-region, who were alienated from states that never provided hospitals, schools, jobs in their villages, towns, and homes, to a point that an individual somewhere will be able to have more control over them. And they can harness resources from somewhere to be able to finance them, to have guns, and to go and fight wars. You must bear in mind that we are in control of the Gambia. We changed it in 2016. We could have changed it in 2021. You decided to leave the government that exists. You can change it again. Those who have the capacity to change should not be in a state of despair. Dare to think. Dare to struggle. Dare to take charge of your destiny. Dare to win. The Gambia is our homeland. We must work to be the proud of the world. Our position is already clear. We are saying, number one, the doctors who discovered the linkage between the kidney injury and the syrup must be given due regard. One thing that is clear is the neglect of public sector doctors. You will see them work for the hospital and also go to the private sector to be able to earn more income. So our emphasis is they should be properly remunerated and encouraged to render public service to our people, because health is number one to survive. And the private sector has health infrastructure, but they do not have a tax regime. The government public service is maintained by our tax money and our resources if we had sovereign national wealth. But the private sector does not have a tax base. So therefore, they collect revenue from the patient. How many can afford that? So our fundamental position is, number one, this should be a clarion call or wake-up call to take care of those doctors. Number two, we must ensure that all medicinal products, pharmaceutical products that are imported must be subjected to quality control and tests. We must therefore equip our agency with the necessary materials and develop in the short run close collaboration with other West African countries, so that we build up a regime of quality control and monitoring of pharmaceutical products that come into the country. Number three, it is important to begin a study, to establish a study of what is the current arrangement. What is really happening? How are drugs imported? a study is absolutely essential, and within 2 weeks, a month, that study should be in the hands of cabinet to indicate what is happening and what should be done to be able to address that gap, that vacuum. We must also be ready to follow that company which earns billions from different pharmaceutical products, but the information we have is that what was produced for the Gambia was specially for the Gambia. Why was that the case? So WHO is there, the world is accompanying us. Our government must lead as quickly as possible and ensure that we follow that company and continue to monitor the lives of our children in order to get the type of compensation for those families and our companies that may have imported those products, so that the company will pay should everything be found that they are culpable. It is also important that we join hands to search for the missing syrup. The media, the alcalos in the villages, everybody, the imams in the mosque, the priests in the churches, everybody who has something to say should be involved, so that at the pulpit, over the radio, at the village centers, they are able to talk about this syrup, so that we will reduce the type of loss that is increasing, as we say, daily because of use of the syrup. That is our position.
Thus far, what do you make of the government's response towards this crisis? And what do you also make of the President's televised statement in response to the crisis?
Well, we have said that the doctors who discovered the syrup must be commended and given tremendous support. What the government has to do is clear. They must work immediately to find out what went wrong, to ensure that, there are still some missing syrup. Unless we collect every single syrup, nobody should be commended for anything. This is an emergency. This is not a time for commendation. Lives have been lost. We should feel that lives have been lost. This is a period of national mourning. It's a period of serenity. It's a period of continuing to work to increase our vigilance, because it may not just be this syrup. Who knows which other drugs, pharmaceutical products are killing? We don't know. So it means that we should increase our vigilance. That is really the task.
Yes, well, you didn't answer the President's televised statement. What do you make of that?
First, you are assuming that I had the President's televised statement. Maybe our colleagues who had the President's televised statement will say. But if you were to say something the President said that you feel I should respond to, then I will respond to that. The President has a duty to talk to his people. It is left to the people to see whether what he said is satisfactory to them or not. But if you have anything that you wish to ask me, then I would answer it.
Yeah, that is because many have expressed their discomfort on the presidency. So we just wanted to hear your stance on it.
Well, yes, you can say people are expressing discomfort. As a government in the waiting will say, well, maybe this is leading us now to move forward, to take charge of the destiny of this country, because it is the people who should express how they see their government. For me, if I say certain things, it appears that we are unhappy that we are not elected to run the affairs of this country. But if it is something substantive, tell me, and I'm sure that we'll be able to address it. Is there anything substantive that he said that you want me to address?
No, it's just a general assessment.
Well, that is left for the people, not for us. You answered your question. You establish a national development plan and only 10% was funded. Well, clearly, I don't know whether you would call that a success story. So essentially, definitely the national development plan has not in any way been successful. All the projects in terms of cattle, sheep, fish, they had all sorts of estimates. I would advise that you join us on the 13th of November to see how comprehensive we have analyzed and how comprehensive we are going to analyze the fate of the National Development Program. But clearly 10% is sufficient indication that they have not achieved the goals they set for themselves. And we don't believe that those goals were properly set in the first place. Because it was a transitional administration, it needed other goals than the goals they set from our perspective. The forum was restricted to a national one to deal with your national concerns, and that will deal with the Pdois concern, what we want to tell the people in terms of our program to 13th November. But notwithstanding, we have made it very clear that the tourism that we have is not people-centered. Why is it not people-centered? If you want 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 people to visit the Gambia and have impact economically, then you must link them to the productive base of the Gambian economy. It means that in the promotion of tourism, you will tell them that we want to eradicate the poverty of our people. We want you to visit a land where you will find happy people, well-fed, well-clothed, well-housed, that you can move about with, chat with, without them being beggars. In order to achieve that, we would have promoted what would be produced by our people. Woven cloths, pottery, every design, fruits, honey, everything that we have that is good would become products from different villages, different communities. And you will promote that when they come to the Gambia, at least they should purchase one of those products and take it back as souvenir. And of course, that will build up the consumption of Gambian goods by 200,000 people, by 100,000 people. You are talking about billions being spent in the Gambia, but billions that will go directly to our people. That is the type of tourism we wish to promote. But that is not the type of tourism that exists today. Good afternoon.
You made mention about the development of our communities. Where do you think the project exactly lies? Are they constitutional? Is it on the underperformance of the individual?
The instruments are defective. I've mentioned one of the instruments where a president can dissolve a council 3 months before. That's a very defective instrument. You will see that in terms of the development budget of the councils. You discuss it with the ministry, and ultimately, what are you going to get from them? You look at also the instruments that restrict you to 25% support of development budgets of councils. Well, who said that it should be 25%? Why shouldn't be a different system where you want a balanced and proportionate development of a country? And if you want a balanced and proportionate development of a country, then there can be devolution of services to councils In certain areas, they'll be responsible for the health, for education, for road building, different facility services that are necessary. And if you devolve those powers to the councils, then it means you need a project design for implementation in those areas. And those could be the project designs and their calculation and the sum involved that would actually be sent for consideration at the budgetary level. So in that sense, when you are allocating the resources of the land, you will make sure that that sum that will facilitate community development will go directly into the hands of the councils. That is a better system of eradication of poverty in the rural areas. And that is a system that is not in place. What is essential is to articulate it, then build up the instruments that will ensure it, and of course it will happen. So to us, we are going to engage, as we have said, a transformative agenda for local government or regional administration. There is no doubt that with Pdois, we have said that we are going to transform the structure of the councils entirely. And one thing that we've always emphasized is that while you are having what you are having, look at the wards, look at the villages. You have village development committee without a treasurer, without a budget. How will they bring about development? Yet they pay rates, they pay taxes, they pay licenses, they pay for their cattle, etc. We are saying that a better system is to ensure that there are village treasuries, and sums that are paid would actually go to those treasuries for development. And not only that, those entities will engage in production. Rather than allow somebody to come and sign a contract with an alcalo to produce banana and then employ the people in the village, we are saying that village itself can transform that plot of land into a village project where from the sovereign wealth fund of the nation, the village will be given means to be able to produce it, and then the marketing of the banana, and it goes, and that sum will go into the village fund. If for places like Batokunkusanya and Kato, that you are mining, then a certain percentage would have been an agreement between the national government and the village, so that it goes to the village coffers for development. We are confident that if you have royalties of that nature being paid, like satellites established everywhere, so when they're established on land owned by the councils, well, royalties should be paid because they are making money from it. I believe you see the trajectory that we've taken, that that is a way that we can ensure that the councils have funds, and those funds are utilized for community development.
I just wanted to add a few things. Of course, Right Honorable Salah has said it all. But, and he has said it clearly, it's system. Systems haven't worked. It's not the individual, it's system. Right from the beginning of post-colonial era, the area councils have been built by the colonial masters, and exactly what they left here has been adopted. Nothing has changed. He clearly stated it just now. Nothing has changed. The system that the colonial built was collect taxes, pay the soldiers, pay the policemen to keep security, and make us clerks. That's it. And that's still what's going on. But what I really want to talk about is the health issue, since I'm a medical person. This is a wake-up call. Unfortunately, it's a very sad wake-up call that we've lost right now, talking about 70 children. And we don't know, because 70 children probably is only in the Combo area, West Coast and Banjul area. We don't know what's happening. And rightfully, the Honorable said, there's still some missing syrups. I question, why was this specifically made for Gambia? Why? Who is the businessman who went and said this is only for Gambia? Why? Was it a plan? Was it something that was deliberate? Was it by accident? But overall, it's a fault of we, the Gambians, the government. We are in a very dire situation. Right Honorable said, and I have said it many times, we import 90% of what we eat. We don't know what we eat. Even the very oil we eat, neglecting our oil processing factory here in Sarah, which has been left dilapidated all these years. And yet we export our peanuts. The oil we're having, the Honorable has rightfully said many times, sleeping oil. Very, very bad for our system. The, kidney failure is rising. Seriously rising in Africa. Ghana especially, I was in Ghana. Senegal, even the Gambia, we don't know because we don't keep statistics. And people die in the villages. Oh, he just died because he has to die. No. People live in Europe and other advanced countries with diabetes for 100 years because they have good medical care, preventive medical, public health services, where you go as far as having, if it is diabetes, high blood pressure, you have nurses that are specialized to teach a patient who is diabetic. Because diabetes and high blood pressure lead to kidney failure. Upon all that, we eat all these ingredients that our grandparents, our mothers never cooked, our own mothers, not of my age. They never added to our food, that are poison. So this is a wake-up call that the government of the Gambia, or whoever is responsible. You know, one time I was coming in this country, I want to buy, how do you call it, Geiger is something that we detect. You know, the Geiger is to detect radiation. There was a time during the Chernobyl disaster. Some of those foods produced in Chernobyl area probably could have been imported to Gambia. We don't know because no one is detecting, no one is checking our food. And sadly, we're importing, as I said, 90% what we eat. And not only that, our farmers are using pesticides and herbicides. They're using the wrong mixture drink solution and adding that to our food chain that we eat. You just have to know. It used to be that Africa, quote unquote, in Africa, we never have high blood pressure and diabetes. Now, probably we are ranking #1 in high blood pressure and diabetes. You don't have to look around your own neighborhood. Go around and ask people in your neighborhood who has high blood pressure and diabetes. All those lead to, if uncontrolled, to kidney failure. But I strongly believe, the majority of kidney disease, kidney failure is coming from our food and from our medications, our drugs. That's what I want to add. So the government should really establish a very, very good lab to detect every food bag that comes in must be checked. Food and drugs, very, very important. Thank you very much.
Questions, I think we can call this press conference a day. We look forward to many more of this. Thank you very much.